getting my positioning. I have like a lot of different SEO customers in the past. I've looked at the worksheet. Yeah, I know it's important. So I'm just kind of looking at it like different perspectives. Okay, what would make me the most money, or what would also be like a more higher return on investment, easier to sell for them? Do you have like any tips? Like which other directions can I look for to getting my positioning?
So I actually had a private consulting call this morning. I'll give you a little bit about his story and it might help to shine a little context on yours. So he's on $1 million a year run rate, right? So about $80,000 a month. He is kind of similar where he's like, look, we're kind of good at everything. We have financial services clients that we're crushing it for. We have some e-commerce store. We're all over the map with what we're doing. And we're also finding ourselves doing more and more for clients with like a land and expand strategy. And he's like, I've been through a lot of your stuff. We've had a lot of conversations. I feel like this is bad. No. And I was like, well, first of all, no. A land and expand strategy is not a bad strategy. Here at the Blueprint, we always teach stripping it down to the core of what's the simplest and most effective. Because when you start to land and expand and do a lot of stuff for clients, not saying that you're doing that right, but it just creates a lot more problems than it does profit, in my opinion. That being said, though, if you do have some great clients and they're of the same, if they're all attorneys and they're all asking you, hey, can you do X for us? And like, absolutely, that's the easiest way to tack on services, right? But, what I was explaining to him was that you don't have to have a defined positioning if you're really, really good at SEO and that's what you do. However, you have to have one or the other, either a defined positioning or a very clear, effective offer. So maybe you lean more towards the offer than the positioning. Because our agency right now, Webris, we've recently, over the last year, started hyper-focusing on attorneys, but we still service like 50 plus clients that are all over the map. We're just doing our SEO sprints for them. But we have a very specific offer for those folks and a very specific funnel for those folks too. So we know where they're coming from. We're dictating and controlling the conversation. So as opposed to saying, I'm only going to work with attorneys, because it's good advice, it is the proper way to do it, but you don't have to do it that way. There's no one way to build an agency. So I would say focus on the offer then. And Isaac actually asked a really good question over here that I'm looking forward to answering, and this kind of ties into it a little bit. But essentially, defining your offer is all about doing what's best and what makes the client or gets them the most results in the fastest amount of time as possible right now. So I think within the scope of SEO, you come up with an offer that becomes an attraction magnet to your business. It's always easier when you're focused on one type of business. And when I answer Isaac's question, you'll understand why a little bit more, because offers and what we're doing is all about solving problems for money. Businesses are going to have problems, whether it's Google, whatever it is. The service doesn't really matter. They have that problem of they need customers, they need clients, right? And it's your job to get that to them. We're all here because we choose SEO, but at the end of the day, SEO is not going to be here forever, right? Google's not going to be here forever. Especially as we see things with like ChatGPT starting to come up, we're all starting to get this maybe view of what the future is going to look like. And if we're stuck doing something like SEO or Google on a specific platform or something, then it's very easy to get left out in the dust very, very quickly. So what I would say is this, I would say you don't necessarily have to be like, I'm only going to work with X, but you do have to have an offer that's going to deliver on Y for people, if that makes sense, right? So I don't know if you've been through our offer stuff. The offer stuff is probably the most impactful stuff. The positioning stuff leads into the offer stuff, but it really is about the offer. If you have a great offer that helps people make more money and get them more clients, then the positioning can be kicked aside a little bit. But having a positioning will just make it go a lot faster. And then when you also tie in the marketing off the back of it. So at the end of the consulting client that I had today, he was like, okay, that's all good and great. Now, how do I get leads? And I'm like, look, let's say you want to run Facebook ads. Who are you going to target? Let's say you want to do outbound. Who are you going to target?
That's one thing. And then the other thing is also like the whole process. Like everything changes. Like when I'm doing shop SEO, that's a category SEO page. When I'm doing landing pages for leads, that's a different process. Like that's a different type of text. That's a different type of landing pages. Different CMSs, the process changes. It slows down the fulfillment.
I mean, you're making my point for me, right? Let me refine that. It takes time, right? Like a lot of people who've been in this program for a while now. 2 years ago, we were doing B2B SaaS. That was like, we were crushing with B2B SaaS. But what I saw happening in the marketplace, and also what I talked about in my consulting call today, was how much we change things. Like I talked to Caesar, who was our operations manager. Every week we have an hour-long conversation about what's going on, this and that. And every single week we're talking about changing what we're doing. We're talking about improving it. We're talking about making small little tweaks. So we're not necessarily overhauling everything or this and that, but over time, when you make those small changes, it adds up to big ones. Essentially, what ended up happening with our B2B targeting was we got really tired of working with overly smart marketing managers that were just a pain in the ass about everything. We're like, this isn't who we want to work with. This isn't who we're really built to work with. So we look back at our portfolio, probably similar to what you're doing, be like, who do we like working with? Who do we get results for? Who is this service a really good fit for right now? In other words, when somebody goes to Google and types in attorney near me, does that search end up in a phone call or a lead. And that's where I always encourage people to start too, is that if you're going to do SEO, that's one of the boxes that you have to check. If people are just going to Google and searching for it and coming on content and then bouncing, what are they paying you? You know, like, what are you really doing for them, right? You're getting more traffic. And this is why so many agencies struggle and they get romantic about SEO, because they're getting that traffic up and to the right. But the client's like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm paying you 10 grand a month. I need to make money off of this. And, you know, getting people to my website doesn't necessarily help us for this type of business, right? So that's another big key one. Another one is purchasing power. Like, does this market have purchasing power? Can they pay you what you need? And that also ties into the question before, which is they're going to be able to pay you not based on what their marketing budget is, but based on what impact you can drive on the business, right? So you look at a gym is like a one that I use all the time, because one of my best friend heroes is a gym, and he really wants to do SEO. And I'm like, it's not worth it, dude. You're never going to make money off of it. You're never going to make money off of it, because people are not going to Google in that volume and being like, best gym near me, and then like going and signing up for that gym. That's not how people find gyms. They find it through social media, they find it through friends, they find it through word of mouth, right? Advertising is another one for gyms, but not search, right? So if you're going to be doing SEO, which it sounds like you are, you know, I don't necessarily always encourage people to change their core skill set, but you've got to make sure that skill set maps to what people need, which is more customers. So is there purchasing power, right? And that's why we like to turn these two in B2B SaaS, because like, yeah, they got money to spend on this, and like they understand inherently, right? Like, another thing is you have to sell this positioning, this target person on your service in terms of what it is and what it does. Like, do you have to put a slide in your proposals like, this is SEO, this is why it's important? If you do, then like it's much harder sell than it needs to be, right? So another thing is like market education. Like, attorneys know about SEO, they know that they need it, which just immediately moves them down the purchasing funnel just inherently because of the market's education level on that. So these are some like additional questions that you can ask yourself to really refine that position. And like, you don't have to have one, you know, like you can test 3 or 4 at a time, right? And that really is just about building a system, right? And this is kind of the last part, which is really the offer, is like you already talked about it, right? Like, doing Shopify SEO is different than doing lead generation SEO. Put together a system for both of those, and then you've got a selling mechanism to sell against both of those. If you've got like, yo, like I've got this amazing system to generate leads for B2B companies, this is the 5-step process, right? Boom, that's an offer, that's a selling point, right? Then you can take that to market. You can test it through outbound, you can test it through paid traffic, right? You can test it through maybe not social media as much, but those are really the 2 ones that you can test it with. You don't have to overtake your website. Like, you go to Weber's.org and it's just like, we do sprints, we do SEO, you know? But very like, people overthink how much. Like, the first question I always get asked on this is like, hey, I want to change my website. And it's like, you don't really have to just yet, you know, because not as many people as you think are like finding your website and being like, oh, they do SEO, this and that. Like, they're coming to your website with their mind pretty much already made up. Your website is really just a mechanism to capture leads and record it.